Welcome to the I Don't Like Murder podcast. This is Jenny. Rita is actually not joining me this week. She couldn't make it for filming, so I'm going to do a little story time without her this week. So I'm going to get into Rosemary Ndlovu, and I want to apologize now because I'm going to mispronounce probably everyone's names in this. It's a South African case about a cop that turned into a serial killer, and her name is Rosemary. She's a police officer in South African Police Service in Johannesburg, and it's said that she had a gambling addiction, which is why she turned into a serial killer in a way. She kept convincing her family members to take out insurance policies on themselves and making her the beneficiary. And given that it was a high crime area and poor, there were a lot of murders, so it wasn't completely unusual that somebody would suspect that somebody would get murdered. But she just kept having family members murdered, and she was always the beneficiary of their insurance policies. Her first known murder was her cousin, Ndlovu, and he died of blunt force trauma. His body was found in March of 2012, and the police didn't do a great job at researching it because there's so many murders. They kind of just like, oh, well, they got caught up in something and got murdered, so they didn't really look too much into it. And she did end up getting a huge payout of what's equivalent to about $6,500 American dollars, and she contributed about $13 to the funeral cost. Part of the insurance she received was supposed to help cover the funeral costs, and all she donated was $13. So I'm sure that didn't really help too much. And then in June the next year of 2013, Audrey, her sister, got a call. Rosemary had invited her to dinner, and so she went because they never really spent time together, so she was kind of excited to spend the night with her. They had a dinner, and then the next day, Rosemary couldn't get a hold of her sister, so she called and reported it to the police, and they went to her house and found her body. Rosemary also got a payout for her death, and they nobody really looked into it too much. Just another murder, so they just moved on. And then the next year, Rosemary opted to become a constable, and she moved to a new police station. And at first, her coworkers thought she was very friendly and generous. She would take them out sometimes. And then she started getting kind of dark and letting people know she was broke after she had been so friendly and generous with them before. So they kind of thought something might have been up there. She also got pregnant that year with her longtime boyfriend, Maurice, with his child, and they had a pretty tumultuous relationship, and so often they would get in fights, and he would spend the night not at their house. He would be out somewhere else. So one day he didn't come back for a couple of days, so she called, she went to the police station to report him missing. And as she was doing that, somebody came up and said, oh, we just found this guy who had been stabbed 80 times, and his name was Maurice. So it was her boyfriend, and they hadn't stolen anything, so he had his wallet on him with his ID, which is how they knew his name and could immediately identify him. But he was stabbed 80 times. So that is quite a bit, and she did receive an insurance payout from him, which would be normal in any circumstance because they were together and they had a child together. So that wouldn't have been, I wouldn't think, too much for somebody to look into. Um, and then a couple years later in 2016, her niece came to stay with her and was hit by a car randomly. So Rosemary took her to the hospital, and they said she had minor injuries. They were all superficial, and they released her. And then later that night, she started to complain of horrible chest pains and that she was unable to breathe. So the next day, she took her back to the hospital, and she had really bad wounds on her, and she ended up dying from a fractured rib and liver damage. So they kind of assumed that she was poisoned and beat. And they said that there's no way, if she had that condition when she was in the hospital the day before, there's no way they would have let her out. They wouldn't have released her in that condition. And Rosemary did get a payout from her insurance. And about this time, with this one, the insurance company started looking into it because they're like, she's gotten a lot of payouts from her family members dying. So they did flag her, and they started, or she had stated that she was the partner of one of her nephews. And when she went to collect the insurance money, there was no way for her to prove that, because obviously it wasn't true. So she was denied that claim. And then after she had been turned down a time or two from the insurance company, she was getting really desperate for money. So she plotted to kill her sister Joyce and 5 of her kids, and she hired a hitman to do this. The youngest one of her sister's kids was 6 months old. So the hitman that she hired basically turned her in, didn't feel right about killing, a 6-month-old child and all of her kids. So he went to the police and turned her in and said, hey, this is what is going on. So they put an undercover police officer with him, and he went undercover to do an investigation on her. And there is a video of her in the car with them, telling them how to kill her and when to kill her, to give her, that she was going to call and have her take these pills so she could relax and sleep, and then that it was going to put her out, so then they could go in, and she wanted all of the kids burnt alive, and her sister. So she's a really evil person. And she said it so calmly, like, yeah, I want you to go ahead. I'll have them take this medicine so they will be really groggy and sleepy, so they'll sleep through it, but I want them burned alive. So she was arrested after they set up the investigation of her. And then she went to trial. She was convicted of 6 murders, along with attempted murder of other family members, her sister and her kids, also her mom. And then she had several other charges in there because of her fraud with the insurance and attempted murders, like different things that go along with murder charges in general. So after she was arrested and was in prison, she was making threats against the investigating officer. And let's see, here is her quote. She said she had hired people or this is his quote. Keshi is his name, was the investigating officer, and he made a statement that said Rosemary, had said she had hired people to kill me and had said if she doesn't kill me, she will make me suffer by getting to my son at school. She had said she knows where my son goes to school and will bury him alive. So he had obviously hired security and had extra police around his family and was very diligent. Like, he wouldn't let his son go outside unless he was there. He made sure if he needed picked up from school, he would go pick him up from school and take him home and wouldn't let him go out to play. Same thing with his wife. When she would get off work, he would go meet her and bring her home, even with the extra security, just to make sure that they were safe and that he was there if something did happen. So after her conviction in the court, she looked at the witnesses and said, "I'll be back for you." So she is very, very disturbed. She also said, when she made her victim to the statement's families, she said, "To all the families, I know they think I'm responsible, but that is not so. The truth is only known by God. However, be that as it may, I would like to ask them to forgive me. I have also made peace with the court's decision, and I accept it. I welcome the decision of the court. I am not angry with or at anyone." That's very strange, given that she also looked at the witnesses and said, "I'll be back for you." So it seems like she needs to be locked up for sure. They are still looking for family members that died before 2012 that may have been because of her. Her first husband and first child had also died before 2012. Her first child was 13 and was suspected of being killed by poisoning. So she just got convicted last year, so the investigation on all of that is still going on. But it's a pretty interesting story, and there really wasn't in the research much about her being a cop turned serial killer, and it kind of seemed that as you went through the story, it was more of she kept the two lives very separate, and it's not that like here where you can have so much corruption in the police office, the police station. It's kind of that they just don't take crime as seriously because it's so prevalent there that it's just more of a relaxed situation. So it wasn't that she even needed to be corrupt or falsify information or anything like that. They just didn't really investigate too much, which I found kind of interesting. It was a really interesting case to look at, and we may go deeper into this at some point, and Rita and I have a little chat about some of the things after she gets back to filming again. But take care. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow us. We have Facebook and Instagram going now, both I Don't Like Murder podcast. So we would love to have you join us there also. Have a good week. Bye.